Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, last week, two doyens of American foreign policy thinking, Robert Gates, who has been around since the Carter administration, in very senior positions, in one administration after another since Jimmy Carter, and Condoleezza Rice, who's been around since Ronald Reagan. Again, she had a senior position in the Reagan administration and has been at the very top of the foreign policy establishment. Anyway, they wrote.
No, I can't think of one accomplishment, but maybe we'll think of it during our podcast. Go ahead.
No, I think you mentioned her. What's her thing? The birthing democracy in the Middle East, which is a perfect expression. Birthing democracy in the Middle East. Yeah, I think that was Condoleezza Rice's great achievement to foreign policy thinking. But anyway, they wrote an article in the Washington Post. The premises of which were a little surprising, because they're saying, well, Ukraine is losing this war, and Ukraine has lost a lot of its industrial power. It's now under Russian control. It's lost a lot of its agriculture under Russian control. Its infrastructure is being destroyed, and basically time is not on Ukraine's side. That was the premise of the article. But then the conclusion was very surprising, because they said, well, that means we have to up the ante. We have to send more and better and more sophisticated and more deadly military equipment to Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine is ready to do the fighting against Russia. In other words, the way to avoid a war with Russia is to get Ukraine to fight against Russia. And we've got to do it early, because look at the example of World War I, look at the example of World War II, 9/11. If we don't act early, then, there'll be a much worse war.
It's forever 1938.
Exactly. And it was a surprising conclusion, because if the stakes are so high and Russia is the equivalent of Hitler, then why rely on Ukraine? Why hold back and say, well, we're going to let Ukraine? I mean, it'd be like somebody saying, well, we're not going to go to war against Hitler. We're going to let Poland do the heavy lifting for us, because the more we give arms to Poland, the more likely Poland is to defeat Germany. I mean, nobody in his right mind would have thought Poland could defeat Germany, but that's the logic of this article.
Well, said differently, I mean, so if Ukraine is on the cusp of victory, apparently, according to these people, again, that have no foreign policy successes, and but it's losing, and we have to make sure that Ukraine can stand for all of NATO. It's our cutaway. Well, using their logic, then why don't we just have a third world war? Because that's what
that's exactly it. That's the logic of it. I mean, if the stakes are so high, World War I, World War II, 9/11, the stakes are so high. Why are you letting little Ukraine, do all the fighting for you?
Yeah, but wasn't it not long ago that the stakes were so high for the Kurds? The Kurds.
That's right. So it was a very surprising conclusion, but also a very dangerous conclusion, because there's, ultimately they seem to accept that Ukraine is losing. Well, if Ukraine is losing, then Ukraine is losing. I mean, it's not, you're not going to change an outcome by sending in more military equipment. So that means it's a given that Ukraine will lose. And since it's a given that the stakes are so high, then, essentially there's only one path forward, which is the United States and NATO take over the war from Ukraine. And that's really where this article is leading.
But what is so dishonest, intellectually and morally dishonest, as a form of malpractice, is that they don't talk about how it could escalate. They don't go to the logical end of what an escalation could mean.
Right.
And that is very dishonest on their part.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
And it's terrifying, because, George, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't born yesterday. I had to just wonder who tapped these two individuals to write an op-ed for the Washington Post. I don't think that, Robert Gates and Condoleezza Rice are in a bridge club. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, they're taking out two establishment heavy hitters
Right.
to hit a point like
Right.
this. And it's
Right.
it really it's very dangerous because it creates a moral equivalence of World War II. Okay.
Right. No,
and it's so dishonest.
No, it is very dishonest because, of course, they don't really address that issue of, well, you're going to send in all this heavy military equipment. You're now saying that the stakes are very high, and Russia's just going to sit on its hands. It's just going to sit, do nothing, just watch all of this. They don't even do what Boris Johnson and these British thinkers, quote unquote, thinkers say. Well, we don't have to worry about nuclear war because Putin's not going to resort to nuclear weapons because he knows that it'll be complete destruction of his country. We're much stronger in nuclear weapons than he is, so we don't need to worry about that. I mean, that's an absolutely idiotic, not to say cretinous line of thinking, but at least it addresses the issue. The obvious issue is that how you're going to escalate, you're going to lead to a direct confrontation, and Russia's just going to sit on its hands and just say, okay, fine, you go right ahead and do whatever you need to do.
George and I are going to do a second video as soon as we finish this one here. I don't want to crowd out this one, but the issue that is the Washington Post, the responsible statecraft, even to a large extent, antiwar.com, which I feel I have a great affection for. But why aren't they talking about peace? See, they're talking about winning a war. See, right. This is the discursive cul-de-sac that the West has put itself into, because they do not talk about the terms of what is a good peace for all. That is verboten. Right. George and I talk about that. We're virtually alone on the internet talking about this, okay? And that way, and what you do is you take the moralizing issue out of it, okay? Right. And they won't, because they have this artificial binary of good evil. But that's not how geopolitics work. And the more you moralize it, the more you muddy up the works there. You gunk it all up, and you can't get to any kind of settlement of a conflict that is really in no one's interest except for people that make arms and the ones that lost their grift in Afghanistan and found it in Ukraine. I'm sorry if I sound very simple, but I think there's a whole lot to that.
I think that there is. And when you think of these people like Gates and Rice and all their friends and associates, they're all vaguely connected with the military-industrial complex, because there's a lot of money that is, I mean, all this money that, the $100 billion for Ukraine, I mean, that's actually not going to Ukraine. Most of it is going to the arms manufacturers. They're the ones who are making a bundle, and therefore it's the arms manufacturers and their associated think tanks that they bankroll who are doing very well out of this war, and hence these think tanks, all churn out these op-eds regularly. We need to fight for Ukraine because the stakes are so high.
George, can you think of a single issue, particularly let's take the case of the United States, where they so valiantly and callously will throw another 40 billion at it? What do they throw money at? What issue do they throw money so easily at?
No,
border control?
No,
destroying the scourge of fentanyl? Right. Oh, no, there's no money for that. Oh, the wall, it's too expensive.
No, that's right.
There's not one issue on the agenda that they would spend so much money so easily, carelessly, with no oversight. So what do you think Gates and Rice are doing? They're spokespeople. They just did an infomercial for these people.
That's right. That's right. And that's what's really so troubling about it, because they do this pious thing. Oh, well, we don't want to get into a direct confrontation with Russia. Oh, no. Last thing on our mind, direct. No, we don't want a war with Russia. Oh, Russia's nuclear armed. Oh, we don't want a war with Russia. No. Biden, very sensible. He's avoiding a war. But what the hell do you think you're doing? What is it you think you're doing? I mean, you keep pouring in this arms, then you're increasing the likelihood, and particularly as your goal is to win this war against Russia. I mean, But of course, why are they saying this? They're saying this because they know there is no public support. If they came out and said, I think it's time to go to war with Russia. What do you think to the American people? Well, you get about 1% of the public that will go along with a war with Russia. It'll be overwhelmingly unpopular. So what do? You keep escalating and escalating and escalating in the hope that at some point you can maybe create a situation in which Russia attacks a NATO member state, and then Article 5, that's it, boys, we're going to war. That's why they keep lying. We don't want to war with Russia. Last thing on our mind.
But see, again, this shows how they're hermetically closed in their own world. We have to escalate to have a victory in Ukraine against Russia, but they never like to consider that the Russians might escalate too. Okay, right. And as Scott Ritter has said, and Douglas McGregor has said repeatedly, is that Russia actually controls the escalation dial. They can determine escalation. All right. And so even that they don't get right here. I mean, they have to fight evil, but they won't fight evil. Okay. I mean, you have to tell me what you want to do here.
Right. Okay? Well, I think that's a very good point, because
and plus, George, again, probably the most frustrating thing for me, and I feel it's necessary to keep bringing it up, but what is their idea of a settlement? Because I think it has nothing to do with what Russia has been talking about and demanding for a better part of 30 years, okay? Not last few months, not the last year, excuse me. And so, again, and plus, the frustrating thing from Rice and Gates is that, well, what exactly is the national interest here? I mean, it's never been explained.
No, well, that's the thing. I mean, it's always a kind of, they make it clear that somehow, we need to win in Ukraine, because otherwise Russia will invade and threaten everybody else. I mean, that's always the sort of underlying logic from these foreign policy people, from Stoltenberg and others, which is, well, we have to fight Russia here because otherwise, Russia will attack somebody else next.
But Ukraine is winning against Russia. So
they don't say that. Well,
the argument, okay, we can just say stalemate. Okay, stalemate. Okay. So I mean, if pluckily little Ukraine can hold off the Russian horde, why would you be afraid of that? See, again, this dichotomy, this artificial dichotomy is created all the time. Russia is either 007 or Keystone Cops. And you see it in the same article over and over again. Decrepit military, morale is low, but they could take over Western Europe.
Right. But yeah, no, I think that's right. But I think that's not the case with the Gates-Rice article. The Gates-Rice article is that Russia is winning, and therefore we have to prevent Russia from winning. But where it becomes very baffling is, well, how do you do that? I mean, if Ukraine is losing, and you said Ukraine has basically lost its industry, its agriculture, time is not on Ukraine's side, why would sending in more weapons alter the outcome? I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. So that's exactly right. But you're right. I mean, of course, they never mention what is the American national interest, because of course we know what the American national interest is: to destroy Russia. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a national interest. It's the goal. The American foreign policy goal is the destruction of Russia. But of course, they can't admit it. So they have to create this fantasy that Putin is a threat to all his neighbors. He's a threat to Europe, which is a completely absurd proposition. But that's the only way that they can justify what they're doing, because then they can still maintain the nonsense that, well, we're defensive. It's all defensive. It's defensive.
And it pairs very well with a video we did a few days ago. And the tool is NATO, to keep NATO relevant. So Russia will be weakened, we'll box them in, but we have to be vigilant. NATO has to be vigilant, okay, and strong. Which of course, as George and I have explained many times, NATO is the vehicle in which the United States wipes away the sovereignty of every single European Union country. So that is also that is not an interest; it's a goal. No, I'm sorry, it's an interest as well.
Yeah, no, that's right, and that's really what is so chilling about this kind of article. What with Gates and Rice said, that they raise the stakes. It's World War I, World War II, 9/11. Those are the stakes. I mean, Hitler. I mean, you brought this up, Hitler, and then they say, okay, but not to worry. Ukraine is going to do our fighting for us. It's happy. Ukraine is ready to do our fighting for us. But what happens then when Ukraine, as you've said yourself, isn't going to be able to fight? You're saying it's losing. So what happens then when Ukraine loses? Since you've already said the stakes are so high, then you only have one logic to it, which is you get involved directly yourself. How do you do it? Well, by coming up with this Mickey Mouse nonsensical theory that Russia is a threat to somebody else, when we've known all along from the 1990s that Russia has been an entirely defensive power. It's basically all it asks is leave us alone. Don't expand to our borders. I mean, how many times does it have to keep repeating this point?
And in the article, Gates and Rice say Ukraine's economy is in shambles, and the country is entirely reliant on foreign aid. Okay, so this is your war, because Ukraine no longer has the means to pursue the war outside of shedding its blood. Which is a totally different conversation, bizarre moral question in itself. Okay, so this is Robert Gates and Condoleezza Rice. This is your war. Okay,
there is a real morality issue in it, which is fairly obvious. Which is you're saying the stakes are so high, and then you're letting some little guy do the fighting for you. It's like you instigate a fight and then you say, well, let me hold your jacket for you. I mean, it's
this is it's so existential that I just don't want to get any dirt under my fingernails.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Let you and him fight. So that's right. It was a morally obnoxious, but it's par for the course. This is what they say. I mean, was it Mitch McConnell said the other way? That's the Ukraine most important issue in the world, and then he said, well, why are we doing this? Well, because there's cold hard national interest involved for the United States, but you never really spell out what are these cold hard national interests. It sounds good, cold hard national.
Yeah, I think he had to cut that presser short because he had to meet his lobbyist from the arms industry in his office.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. So that's it. So the cold hard national interest is they lie to the American public, and by suggesting that there is some kind of a threat from Russia. They wheel out all the shibboleths of the Cold War, Russia, onto the English Channel. And as you say, hey, I thought you said that they're so useless and spastics, they can't defeat Ukraine, and now they're going to roll to the English Channel.
But the interesting thing is that haven't you noticed that these kind of people, they like to invoke the First World War, the Second World War, another Hitler is here, 9/11, but they refuse to go into contextualialize how this conflict came about in the first place. They never contextualize it.
Never. No. It's always some, Putin wants to revive the empire. He's an imperialist. He wants to rule over Ukraine, just not like that. He kind of invented this. That's it. He wants to revive the Soviet Union. They come up with all of these fantastical theories for which they provide no evidence, other than that famous snippet of a quote from that speech he delivered in 2005. That's it. That's the only evidence. You know, you can come up with 100 different quotes where Putin says we cannot revive the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is gone. And then we have no interest in reviving the Soviet Union. But no. Keep digging up that snippet of a sentence from 2005.
Well, God forbid anybody in Russia say we have to fight them in Ukraine, so we don't have to fight them in Russia.
That's right.
Okay, this is, you know, the reason why George and I did this, because not that we have any respect for Robert Gates or Condoleezza Rice, because we don't. But I mean, if these are the people that are the front people for this ridiculous, very immoral message,
Right,
you know,
right.
they're both in Condi's at Stanford, right?
She's at the Hoover Institution. She's now the director of the Hoover Institution, which is simply a money-making operation. I mean, they just that's all she as the director of the Hoover Institution. The time of the director is taken up exclusively with raising money. So what, you know, that's Silicon Valley. You go to all the Silicon Valley, and you know they're all in on this. On the military-industrial complex. I mean, Silicon Valley is intimately connected with that. That's where you get your money. So yeah, she has a direct financial interest in that.
Okay. Yeah. Money's war is good. It's almost like war is almost like having your own private printing machine, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
All right, that's our update on these two has-beens that have no meaningful positive foreign policy record. Okay, but that's par for the course in what we're seeing. Stay tuned. We got another one coming up, right? But we're gonna bookend this weekend here. So this is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Please visit our store. And it's Sunday. It means the drought is coming to an end, but you have to wait till Tuesday.
Exactly. This horrible weekend is now almost over. You know, probably, you know, just get an early night, so get it over with, and then we're into Monday, and Monday is almost Tuesday, and so Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please join me for another live stream on Locals. Come with comments, criticisms, and suggestions. And on the way out the door, think about little Buddy. Buddy doesn't want to be a has-been, and he certainly doesn't want to be thought of as a never was. So he's very much, you know, he has his future before him.
He has nothing against meeting lobbyists, okay?
Nothing against meeting lobbyists. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip him out, dunk him in his tip jar. He'll be very appreciative. So we're very grateful for all of your help and friendship and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve them, the technology, and most important of all, we can keep Buddy away from those terrifying lobbyists. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.